Welcome, I'm Thomas, the Accidental DM, and welcome to episode 2 of the playthrough of Alone Against the Flames, which is the solitary scenario for keepers in the Chaosium starter set. I'm playing the pre-generated character by the name of Keiko Kane, and so we'll begin session 2 by giving a brief recap from Keiko's perspective. Dear Diary, hope this isn't a sign of things to come. I couldn't even complete the first leg of my trip up to Arkham without something going wrong, and all I had to do was sit on a bus. I scheduled a couple of days of rest in my journey, so I won't need to contact my dean at Miskatonic University just yet, but I guess I better start telling you my woes so I can get back to figuring out how to get out of Emberhead. I boarded the bus, and it seemed a pleasant trip, if not a little warm. I was able to doze off for a while, but was suddenly shaken from my slumber as the bus skidded off the road because of a tractor. I know I'm from the city, but what was a tractor doing in the road? Well, no harm, no foul, as Terrence used to say. We were back on the road shortly, but as the sun started to set, the bus breaks down right outside this little village called Emberhead. The driver recommends a lodging house because he says the engine is overheated and we're not going anywhere tonight. We're supposed to meet at 8 a.m. the next morning to get back on the road. More on that later. I found Mrs. Ledbetter's house. She's a charming woman, as well as her daughter. I settled in the room and I had a lovely stew. After dinner, I decided to take a quick walk. After a while, I had the strangest impression that I was being followed. I thought I saw someone, but when I went to follow them, they disappeared. That was certainly enough excitement for one night, so I went back to my room. I had a strange dream. I normally wouldn't mention it, except for a man I met later the next day. In the dream, the room in Mrs. Ledbetter's house was filled with flames that leaped about like the dancers in the Broadway show I saw with Alice and Julia. Anyway, after a quick breakfast, I arrived at 20 to 8, where I left the bus the night before, and the bus was gone. When the townsfolk saw me with my bag searching for it and told me the bus left at first light, I'll be writing a strongly worded letter to the bus company once I arrive in Arkham. What sort of company abandons a young woman alone? Apart from Mrs. Ledbetter, the denizens of Emberhead are not particularly helpful. None of the local artisans have transport. The general store has no phone, and the village hall was closed. Without any other leads, I decided to hike down to the road and see if I might wave down a passing vehicle. I didn't find one, but a strange man with a cloth around his head. As soon as he saw me, he took off in the opposite direction. I followed him, hoping to ask his help, but he disappeared. I was about to give up and return to the village when I just happened to spot him hiding in a crevice. I don't know what possessed me, as I normally wouldn't do such a thing, but I went down into his hiding place. And I saw his face. It gave me such a fright. The left side of his face looks as if it melted off. Perhaps Grandma Kane is right about needing to listen to dreams. But whatever accidents this man had, Mr. Abergast was his name, must have messed with his mind. He went on and on about fire and mentioned weird names that I thought were gibberish. But in the midst of his ramblings, he mentioned the people of Emberhead. They may be standoffish, but apart from Silas leaving me stranded here, I have nothing to suspect any of them. Maybe I'll mention Mr. Abergast and Mrs. Ledbetter when I see her later. I'm not interested in their town gossip, though. I just want to get to Arkham and start my new life. And so we'll begin then by looking then at the entry which we were sent to at the very end of our last session, which is to number 160. You turn back to the road and your core business, getting out of Emberhead and onward to Ossipee. The ridges give you a good viewpoint from which you can see the course of the road. It winds with the hills, disappearing into woodland for a while before emerging further on. You lose sight of it somewhere towards a second patch of woodland. By your best estimation, that is at least 6 or 7 miles distant. You see no other settlement or traffic. It may be worth taking a chance and walking. The weather is still mild, but you'll need supplies before you attempt it. Go to 25. So I've got my bag, which is quite heavy, as I've been having to lug it around. It's currently at Mrs. Ledbetter's house, so I'd rather not do the 6 or 7 miles in that. I will, because I do need to get out of here and get back on my journey to Arkham. But we're back at 25, which was our list of different opportunities of things to do. The ones we have not done yet at this point are to examine the large metal structure or go to explore the church. I think then Keiko will probably go to the church. Maybe there's a pastor there who might be able to help out, so we're going to go to number 34. You cross the street toward the church. As you glance to your left, you gaze alights on the large metal structure. Something bothers you about its positioning. You back up and look again. Yes, Emberhead's central thoroughfare points directly at the structure. This seems too precise to be a coincidence. You press on and draw in the shadows of the church. The building is in a sorry state. The top of the steeple is missing. A ragged gash of splintered boards marks its absence, and the floors beneath it have collapsed. It appears to have torn through the roof of the main building as it fell. Only the back half is still intact. The white paint, which once covered the church, has yellowed and peeled. It seems safe enough to explore the rear section. Old pews are stacked against the wall, choked with mildew. Most of the windows are broken. You guess this church has been disused for about 20 years. This is a little more interesting to you. It's a bit strange. Not something I would have expected to see in a town up here in Massachusetts. But, All right, so we're asked then to make a ride roll with advantage. So we get a 26, and we do get to roll with advantage, so we get the 10s again a second time. It's probably not going to get lower than a 2, but we'll check. Yeah, so we'll go with our 26, which I'm pretty sure is going to be a success. No, it's not. Our ride is a 5. Okay, so that is not a success. Otherwise, we go back to number 25. So we're back to our last opportunity of things to try. And so then we will examine the large metal structure and go to number 57. You walk up the approach, the most central of the village's major streets. It points directly at the old, odd metal structure. As you emerge from the shade of the nearby buildings, you are greeted by a magnificent panorama spread from the north to the southeast. The last colors of fall tint the hills in a sleepy gold. The structure, by contrast, is made from uncompromising iron singed black. It supports an immense curved platform at the level of your head. Further struts snake up a central point. It looks like they may have some kind of sculpture at one time, but are now twisted and melted beyond recognition. An older gentleman passes, looking at you with rheumy eyes. "You here for the festival?" he asks. "That's the beacon. When they light it night after next, you'll be able to see it 10 miles away." He gives a little nod of satisfaction, then moves on, leaning on his walking stick. Now you notice bundles of wood tied and stacked together against the buildings nearby. Perhaps this festival would be an interesting diversion, but you must really head up to Arkham as soon as possible. And so we're asked now to make a spot hidden roll. Okay, and that is a 58, and our spot hidden is a 45. Otherwise, I have to go back to 25. We've already done everything that we can do there, so I think I will go ahead and spend the luck in order to have that, to make that a success. So a spot hidden is a 45. I need to spend 13 of my luck in order for that to happen. All right, so that takes us from 45 down to, if my math is correct, down to 32. And we will go then to number 69. As you walk away from the iron structure, you notice something strange about the construction of the village. All the wooden dwellings are concentrated in the west and the southwest, to the east and northeast, closest to the beacon. The buildings are formed from dark brick and clay. Does this mean the settlement began at the beacon and spread west? And then we go back now to number 25. So now that we've done all the possible options of exploration, we're now directed to go to number 3. Your morning exertions have left you hungry. You roam the streets of Emberhead looking for sustenance. There is nothing resembling the busy cafes of your hometown or anything that might be called a restaurant. It is beginning to look like you will have to get supplies from the general store when May Ledbetter comes down the street with a girl trailing in her wake. This must be Ruth. As she notices you, she races past her mother and approaches you with a smile. This is a different Ruth from the shy creature of last night. As she reaches you, she stops and stretches her arms up in celebration. She looks up in your eye. Abruptly, the smile drops from her face, and she looks several years older. "Get out before the festival," she hisses. "Get out." She blinks hard, then scuttles back towards her mother. May approaches, wrapping an arm around her daughter's shoulder. She smiles. "How are you getting on? Have you found transport?" Startled, you explain the frustrations of the situation. "I tried Mr. Winters in the village hall. He's always in the afternoon. You'll be hungry by now. Help yourself to any food in the house. The door's not locked." You glance at Ruth, where she has squirreled herself behind her mother's legs. Her eyes implore you to silence. Okay, we're given the option then of either asking Ruth about what she said, asking May about what Ruth said, or to say nothing. That's an interesting one, because with the way that Ruth has kind of asked her, kind of those eyes kind of imploring you to silence, you don't want to hurt that trust at this point. And so I think at this point, Keiko's definitely has kind of a bewildered look on her face, but she's going to say nothing. So we'll go now to number 22. You take your leave of the Ledbetters and head towards their house. The door opens easily. In the low kitchen, you make a meal from stodgy bread and leftover stew. A little window offers a view to the mountains. If you learned one thing this morning, it was that Emberhead streets hold little to occupy the visitor from out of town, but there's still about 5 hours of daylight remaining. You could take some provisions and the bare essentials from your luggage and set out in the hope of reaching another settlement before dark, or you could ask advice from this Mr. Winters. Okay, and our options then are prepare and walk out of town, or we can head to the village hall instead. Things are strange, but I don't think they're strange enough that she wouldn't seek out the help then of the local town official. And even after going to see Mr. Winters, she can always then head out afterwards. So I think she will go to the village hall instead. So she'll go to the village hall first, so we go to number 11. The village hall overlooks the north ridge of the village. You walk along Silbury Street to find it, conscious of the oppressive black metal structure framed at the end of the road. The shutters of the hall are opened and some windows left ajar. There is no knocker, but a little bell over the entrance tinkles as you push the front door. Inside, a sturdy door to your right is marked private. To your left, an opening leads to a bright room. You take a few steps inside. Benches line the walls, and there are 2 notice boards mounted between the windows. So we can examine the notice board, or we can knock on the closed door. Keiko's a bit inquisitive, so she will gander at the notice board before knocking on the door. So we go to 17. The floorboards creak beneath you as you cross the room. You feel a slight spring in your step. Perhaps this room is used as a gymnasium for the village children. One notice board appears to be for the adults of the community and one for the children. The former looks neglected, featuring handwritten advertisements for household items and a yellowed note about telegraph pricing. There is nothing about the festival. The children's notice board has a schedule for weekly creche services and a number of paintings obviously done by the children themselves. Most are incoherent, though colorful. As best you can tell, they depict fireworks or perhaps the tale of Joseph from the book of Genesis. One has a lost pen and hangs upside down. It shows a giant bird attacking Emberhead. Or it might simply be that the artist has not yet mastered the subtleties of scale. All right, we're asked now to make a spot hidden roll. So we will roll, and we come up with a 25, which I'm pretty sure is a success. Our spot hidden is a 45, so that is a success. Success will go to 30. As the afternoon sun hits the floor, you notice something curious. The boards under the windows are newer than the boards in the center of the floor. The frames also show signs of having been replaced in the recent past. Perhaps rain leaked in and rotted the wood. Okay, now we go then to 37. The door scrapes behind you. A middle-aged, bespectacled gentleman appears in the doorway. May I help you? You explain you are visiting on May Ledbetter's recommendation. Well, I'm Clyde Winters. I'm not sure I can help you, but would you care for some coffee? I'm partial to a cup in the afternoon. He gestures to the open door behind him. This seems like a worthwhile opportunity, and you are a little thirsty. Go to 43. You step through the door marked private. The other side of the village hall is in marked contrast to the public space. The room is compact, lined with shelves of books and file alcoves. One corner is reserved for a tiny pantry and what is presumably a water closet. You study Mr. Winters as he fills the percolator. Although thin on top, his hair is oiled and neatly swept back. His suit is a somber affair and well-tailored, even if the cut is a little old-fashioned. A lesser man working alone might have loosened his bow tie for comfort. On the desk, opposite of the wall, you notice what looks like a telegraph set. Definitely then, we're given the choice of ask about the telegraph or make some small talk with Mr. Winters. Keiko is not into small talk right this moment. She sees the telegraph as an opportunity to get home, so we will go now to number 56. A telegraph. Much as we value our isolation, we need the link sometimes. You open to send a message. I must apologize, the line has been down for 2 weeks. I reported the fault, of course, but they're not so speedy when the problem lies in a rural area. I'm expecting to repair the day after next. I do appreciate how frustrating this must be. The coach is due in, 3 days? but I think he's going west. Perhaps you might engage a wagon. One of the farmers might... You explain that you have asked a few of the residents already, but to no avail. I'll tell you what. Winter pours out a steaming cup of coffee. The dark liquid smells rich and strong. When the repair crew arrives, I'll ask them to take you back with them. How would that be? They might want $1 or $2 to grease the wheels. The day after tomorrow. It's less than ideal, but it's the first real opportunity you have. We give them the option of either thank Mr. Winters and leave, or to ask about his library. She is a professor, or soon-to-be professor at Miskatonic, so let's just ask a little bit about the library, even though probably history, local lore isn't going to be her specialty, but just for a little bit of chit-chat, since he seems to be friendly. We go to 62 now. You make a small but flattering remark about the couple of the volumes on his shelves. Winters blushes with pleasure. Well, of course, they're not my personal collection. They belong to the village, he says. But I did select most of the recent items. This is the community library, you see. I put up the private sign to stop people just wandering in from meetings in the other room. But this is really a public space. You scan the shelves. There's a sparse but respectable collection on mathematics and the sciences, passable sections on history and arts, and a shelf of literature. He has a few lowbrow novels tucked away in a corner with tatty copies of Bizarre Tales magazine. Quality did not always equate to popularity, I'm afraid. Winter gives you an apologetic smile. So we're given the option to take some time to research in the library or leave while it is still light outside, go to 180. Okay, she has a couple of options for getting out of town. I think she'll spend just a little bit more time. So let's go to number 68 to research in the library. Winters is happy to spend the rest of the afternoon in study and offers you an upright but comfortable chair. You have enough time to pursue one line of research in depth. So we can read about the history of the area, or we can read about the festival, read something from the sciences, or to read some of the weird fiction. I think the festival is something that's kind of captured her attention just a little bit between what Mr. Abergast said last night and what Ruth said this morning. Her interest is piqued just a little bit, so she will read about the festival. So we go to page 81. You're not surprised to find there is no published work on Emberhead's festival. Winters pokes around and finds a cased monograph, handwritten on yellow paper by a Dr. Anilowski, an acquaintance of my father's, I believe, Winters says. The manuscript is somewhat difficult to read, and you make slow progress. Anilowski speculates that the festival has its origin in pagan rites brought over by Celtic settlers, which celebrate the ancient festivals of Beltane, Samhain, Imbolc, and Lungdasta. There is some discussion on the struggle between the seasons and a couple of oblique references to the alignment in Emberhead. Anilowski suggests the meaning of the festival slowly changed around the turn of the century. The monograph terminates mid-sentence at the end of page 28, just as it begins to discuss the modern practices. You ask Winters if he has the remaining pages. No, I'm afraid those have been misplaced, he says. Perhaps they are still in the library somewhere, but he shrugs. I must take the time for a thorough stock take. Now go to 99. The afternoon wears on. You're not quite finished your reading when Winters glances out the window and stands up. He clears his throat. All right, we're asked now to make a credit rating. All right. Let's see what her credit is going to be. A 62 is probably not going to cut it, but let me check real quick. Credit rating is a 40. No, she does not pass her credit rating. So fail, go to 105. I'm afraid I have some errands to run before dark, so I must close the library for today. I do hope you'll return tomorrow afternoon if you are so inclined. You leave the building with Winters, waiting as he locks up. You thank him for the coffee and the access to the library. It disappears off down an alley. You hope to be away from the village before tomorrow afternoon, but it's good to know that there is a place you can occupy yourself. Now go to 180. As the light fades, you return to the Ledbetter house and eat a light supper. May is unusually taciturn. Ruth's eyes flick to yours several times during the meal. There's an urgency there you cannot quite interpret. Afterwards, May ushers the girl into their room. You've been Emberhead for barely one whole day, and you already feel confined by it, both geographically and socially. This evening seems to offer little. We're given the options then of do some stargazing, attempt to speak to Ruth, and we're also given the option then to go and check out, go visit again with Mr. Abergast. I think for Kiko, it's kind of between Ruth and Abergast at this point. Ruth might be a little more difficult to talk to as she's staying in her mother's room, but Abergast seemed a bit off to Kiko, so I think she will attempt to speak to Ruth first, so we'll go to 138. In time, May returns to the kitchen and busies herself clearing up. To speak to Ruth, you will need to get May to leave for a short while. You help with the dishes and try to think of some ruse. In time, an idea comes, and you ask about Silas and his friends in the village. May narrows her eyes. He knows Troy on the other side of town, she says. Not sure I'd call them friends, more like an old feuding couple, but he'll probably spent the last night at Troy's place. You ask May if she could visit Troy and ask if Silas mentioned any plans to return. May looks dubious. Right now, she asks. I think May is probably most concerned about getting to Arkham for her career, so she will try to persuade. So that gives us a 45. Let's see how good Kiko is at persuading. Her persuade is 40. She'll spend the luck. All right, so that'll take us down then to 27. All right. So if you succeed, go to 145. Well, I suppose it will only take a few minutes. May fetches a coat and heads out into the night. You give her time to get clear, then rap on the bedroom door. Nothing comes but silence. Then feet pad across the floor and the door opens a few inches. Ruth's eyes stare through the gap, glancing from left to right. You explain her mother has left the house and ask what has been bothering her. Those eyes flick up to stare at you. It's tomorrow, she whispers. Same as every year. They took my da. They'll take you if you let them. The conviction in her eyes is chilling. You press her. Who is she talking about? All of them. Everyone. They've been watching since you got here. You're marked. Her voice is hollow. 1 year, when I'm older, they'll take me. You hear footsteps approaching from outside. Ruth's eyes flash and the bedroom door slams. You turn back to drying the dishes. May enters and removes her coat. That man was a waste of time, she hisses, and heads through to the bedroom. Okay, now we go then to 157. The familiar surroundings of your guest room are becoming constrictive. The neat bed, small wardrobe, and dressing mirror have the feel of a prison cell about them. What are you still doing here in Emberhead? Your new life is elsewhere. You lie on the bed and stare at a small crack in the ceiling. You turn over the day's events, thinking through the little details you spotted. You are certainly weary from the elevation and the fresh air, but do you still feel safe here? Kiko is definitely kind of off-kilter in this situation. Our choices are let yourself fall asleep or try to stay awake. I mean, it could be the overactive imagination of the little girl, but the fact that you also have that crazy Mr. Abergast with the kind of strange tales that corroborate, I guess might be the best way of talking about it, the girl's story. Kiko would be a little bit concerned, and maybe she wouldn't want to go to sleep right away. So I think she will stay awake, so we go to 2:30. Sleep presses down on you. You blink it back and sit up, trying to think through the situation. Everything in Emberhead seems to be working to stop you leaving. Perhaps the answer is to strike out at first light, to walk as far and as fast as you can. You can always return for your possessions, and if you lose them, you have nothing so precious that it could not be replaced. A tiny creak draws your attention from the other side of the room. Slowly, almost silently, the doorknob is turning. We're given the options of grab it and wrench the door open, or pretend to be asleep. Wrench the door open. Go to 248. You heave the door open, ready for a confrontation. May stands on the other side, wrapped in her bed jacket. She steps back in alarm. You seem not yourself, she stammered. I wanted to check up on you. You assure May you're in fine health and watch as she returns to her own bedroom. Once the door closed, you borrow a kitchen chair to wedge under your door handle. Perhaps this piece of fortification will permit you a few hours of restful sleep. Go to 58. Things are definitely getting weird. Gotta get out of Emberhead. You awaken to the sound of feet in the street outside. Your night's rest has brought a new determination. Today you will meet Emberhead on your own terms. All right, we go now to 64. The Ledbetter kitchen is empty, although bread and eggs have been laid out for your breakfast. There's a note from May explaining that she has taken Ruth out for a few hours. Okay, so we go now to 78. You make a quiet circuit of the village, pausing in unobtrusive places to watch the villagers. It is rather busy for this time of the morning. Yawning locals stream back and forward along the rows, carrying bundles of split logs to the side of what you've heard referred to as the beacon. You see two figures already up in its superstructure arranged in the wood. The festival bonfire will be most impressive, but do you intend to stay to see it? No. You suspect by now that something is amiss here. While the villagers are distracted, you may do some illicit investigation, or you may simply leave town without looking back. So our options are search Maid Ledbetter's bedroom, go alone to the village hall, take a closer look at the artisan's courtyard, spy on activity at the beacon, or slip down to the east road and flee for good. Yeah, that's what we're taking. Go to 7. As you approach the southern road that descends to the lower ridge, you see 4 villagers blocking the route with farm tools and clubs. You veer off and head towards the west road. Your heart sinks as you see exactly the same scene as the other exits from the village. You are trapped. All right. We're given then the options of trying to walk past the guard groups, try to slip past in disguise. Okay. Kiko's not a very big person, and they do look like they mean business, so I don't know if she could bully her way through with a group of guards. Let's try going in disguise, 125. On the other side of May Ledbetter Street, you see a washing line with some baggy, crumpled clothes. It's not a lot to work with, but you use your own clothes as stuffing, improvise a hat, and change your gait to a stooped shamble. Nobody gives you a look as you limp towards the southern exit from the village. The guards are still at their stations, scrutinizing passers-by, but they're beginning to look bored. All right, so we need to make a hard disguise roll. Okay, let's see how she does. I'm pretty sure, oh my goodness, just to check to make sure, but disguise is a 5%. That's I would have needed a 1 to get, or I would have needed a 2 to get my hard. So we do not succeed. We fail, so we go to 139. The locals aren't as stupid as you thought. They grab you and march you back into the center of the village. Not good. Go to 108. The fading light from a narrow window tells you the afternoon is giving way to evening. Your hands are shackled behind your back so you cannot even lie down on the rough bed. A woman you have not seen before comes in. Her face is wrinkled and her eyes dull. They do not meet yours, but she puts a cup to your lip. Accept the drink or reject it. Reject. You turn your face away, and when she tries again, you dash the cup from her hands using the side of your head. The clear liquid spills across the floor. The woman gives a half shrug and turns to leave the room. You shout after her, but she gives no reaction. You soon become thirsty. We go now to 205. As the light fades outside, your little prison becomes dark. You can hear much activity around the building. Occasionally, an orange glow passes the window. The only comfortable position in the shackles seems to be to sit against the end of the bed with your arms hanging behind you. You need to concentrate and come up with a plan. There's clearly no escape from your bonds. You do not know exactly what your captors want from you, but you cannot ignore the fact that they have spent the entire day constructing a massive bonfire. Go to 27. The door scrapes, wrenching you back into the moment. Orange light spills in the house from blazing torches held at the threshold. 2 large villagers step in and grab you. At least you assume they are villagers. They wear heavy black cloaks, and their faces and hands are painted entirely black, save only for a red triangle centered on their left eye. You try to drag your legs, but they reach under your arms and lift you bodily from the bed. Outside, it seems that the whole village has congregated to see you. Every single one is a blackened face with a red triangle motif. Torches sputter and spill fire. You struggle, but you can see physical resistance is hopeless. You are marched to the central street and turned to face the beacon. Definitely should have listened to Ruth yesterday evening. Go to 117. The procession down the approach is slow and formal, save when you sense weakness and yank at your captors. A chill touches you when you see 3 human shapes carried ahead of you draped in red cloth. The beacon looms larger and larger, its dreadful silhouette a black triangle pointed to the stars. A low drone begins among the cloaked figures. Unbidden, the word mourners comes to mind. Smoke from their torches makes you cough. You feel heat on your face. As you reach the cleared area around the beacon, 3 dancers break from the pack, young girls swinging balls of fire in spectacular arcs, drawing circles in the night air. One by one, they draw close to you and touch your forehead with sooty fingers. Each kisses you 3 times on the left cheek, right cheek, and then forehead. And they whisper in your ear. The smell of kerosene fills your nostrils. All right, we make an appearance roll. Oh, goodness, what are we going to get? Okay, let's find out what happens. That is definitely a fail. So I will head then to 148. Through your sacrifice, the village will be reborn, says the first dancer. You pass from the earth to air for all our sakes, says the second. Through incandescence may you find rapture, says the third. Their dance weaves off and disappears behind the building. As you arrive beneath the beacon, 10 villagers close in on you, working with surprising coordination. They immobilize you and lift you up the blackened iron stairs to the raised platform. You cannot help but shiver at the sight of the central framework, twisted from past blazes, and what you can now clearly see to be fastening points for chains. None of the eyes meet yours as they lash you to the metal. The village sings now, something rhythmic and ancient, carved from odd syllables. A second group ascends to the beacon, carrying the 3 draped bodies. With reverence, they arrange their burdens in a triangle around your feet. Then they withdraw, leaving you alone with the dead, shin deep in a sea of kindling. Go to 33. It seems the entire village is gathered around the beacon to watch you burn. Behind the face paint, you recognize Mabe Ledbetter. And yes, that is Silas, the coach driver standing at her side. The audacity and scale of the deception staggers you. A man steps up on a dais and raises his hands with quiet authority. The frame of his spectacles obscures the red triangle on his face. So we draw here together again on this night, as we do each year, and we give thanks to the one who will preserve the village against the fire of the void. You will be taken by the ones from above in our stead. Your death will bring life to our streets and bounty to our fields. It will safeguard our children and our elders alike for another year. We salute you. He bows his head. All around the beacon, bearers step forward and lift their torches at the edge of the raised platform. A ring of tiny flames flickers up around the perimeter. As they wink, the singing of the villagers drops into an unearthly rhythm. Doo-doo, 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 doo-doo. Our options: throw all your remaining strength against the bonds, or to wait and see what happens. Hell no to that. We're going to throw everything we got. So we want to make a strength roll. 48. You're tired. And your flesh ought to be insufficient against the dark irons of the chains. Yet you feel them give a little. There's a weakness in one of the links. All right, we have to make a hard success roll. So I actually hadn't done that yet. All right, I'm going to keep that 48 because it's what I should do. But let me take a look. It says a hard strength roll. A hard is a 25. Okay, she has 27 luck left. If she spends 23 of that, so that takes me down to 4 luck. She is drawing from the very depths of her soul to get the hell out of here. Okay. So we do make our hard one, so we go to 53. As tongues of fire leaps toward you through the kindling, you close your eyes and heave on the chains. They give a little more, then clack. One side of the chain drops. You wriggle in the coils, loosening the bond even as heat singes your ankles. The man on the dais stares at your movements. Then he picks 2 youths from the crowd and points directly at you. Just as you shrug the chain off and step free from the ironwork, the youths mount the blazing platform. Flames spread up their trousers as their cloaks catch. They dive at you. Okay, we have to make a hard dodge roll. And we don't have any luck left, so let's hope for the roll of the dice. 58. I am pretty sure that's not going to work. My dodge is a 25. That is definitely a fail. Oh, poor Kiko. Oh, I think this is the end of her. If you fail, go to 123. They bear you back into the center of the pyre. Their eyes are flecked with fervor and terror, even as the flames spread over them and across your clothes, even as the heat builds and sears your flesh, even as smoke chokes you and your vision blurs. They hold you down in the flames. Your screams mingle with theirs as the fire does its work. The end.